It's gonna make me think they're gonna do something, but they're not gonna do something. I was wrong.
First top 5 for Guts and Blackpowders, and let's go ahead and bring up a pretty controversial take. The top 5 hardest maps in Guts and Blackpowder.
Number 10.
Freezing its way into the number 5 spot we have is Vortahus Fortress. So this map is quite honestly not too bad, and quite honestly it is kind of a short-ish map to actually play. At least the older version, since you could literally do that in like under 8 minutes. But then it got reworked to where it does take a little bit longer and it is a bit more trickier now. So first things first is you start off in this little town thing and you have to make your way to like the church by clearing a bunch of snow, and once you get to the church you have to do a firefight or last stand inside of this church. And there is a crap ton of them that come in through the windows of the church, but also from the outside of the church. But it isn't too hard at all there, but I mean the fact that a bomber can literally spawn in the window of the church and try to blow your asses up inside of it is kind of a bit cruel. But then you make it to the final stand of this map, and this is where it gets really tricky, because instead of like a majority of the maps where you have quite a lot of space and room to basically jump around and avoid the undead, you have just a single small 3-foot wide-ish bridge to which you can only really place down walls and I guess some other spike traps and stuff like that, which is still very helpful. But also there are some cannons on the other side of the map that can also really help out. Now the thing about this map is that a crap ton of bombers actually spawn in, and if your buddies aren't shooting them and or the cannon dudes also, then your defenses will quickly get just vaporized and well, everything will just go to shit within seconds. One of the things about this map that does make it a very tricky is that there really isn't any room to actually like have any backup since it's a small bridge. It does get pretty tricky, however it isn't too bad.
Number 4.
Number 4 spot we have is Cobb. So this map is also kind of a long-ish map, which I guess does earn it some bit of, I guess, difficulty maps wise points. But anyway, let's go ahead and get into this map. Break down this giant wooded gate with a cannon in order to get to the next area, to the castle. And this is a pretty tricky area to actually be in. First things first is that you need at minimum 2 people to be around this cannon, 1 reloading it and then 1 firing it, and the other people just need to be protecting them. And there is a ton of the zombies just spawning all around you guys, and quite honestly it does get kind of intense, especially when there's so many that can spawn in, and also when you need at minimum 2 people in order to get to the next area that constantly need to be there. And then you have the climbing the castle, which there could be bombers any around every corner. And then you have the final stand where you have to open up the door down there. I don't know why it's said like that. And then there is just a crap ton of them that come out from this entire caged area. Now, it isn't too bad as well since you have plenty of room to actually retreat to, since it is literally a giant staircase. But when there's tons of bombers, zombies just pouring in non-stop without any break whatsoever, it does tend to get quite overwhelming at many parts.
Number 7.
I'm not too sure if I should count this one, but I mean, it does have necessarily a mission to where you can complete it and complete the map, so I guess we should count it. Number 3 spot we have is Berezina. So quite honestly, this map has one of the most tedious tasks quite imaginable. Your task is, well, just out in the cold, and you have to build an entire bridge to the other side of the river. And quite honestly, this is a very time-consuming like map. Quite honestly, it literally goes on forever and ever and ever, especially how you have to build every single part of the bridge piece by piece in order to get to the other side. And also, you can't just do it just in like speed running your time, because also the guys who come around with the wagon have a bunch of logs that come around like every 2 to like 5-ish minutes. So quite honestly, it lasts for like 30-ish minutes to beat this map, with the added variable of, you know, constant zombies spawning all around the bridge, the waters, around the entire buildings to where you can get some warmth. It does get very tediously annoying when you have to go from one side of the map to the other side of the map and just essentially place down a plank of wood, go back, grab another one, go back, and then there's also the zombies you also have to deal with, and also, well, yourself as well. You literally just cannot die here since there's also achievements.
Number 11.
Number 2 we have is Copenhagen. This map, which I'm just gonna go ahead and say, it was probably the hardest map in Guts and Blackpowder for the longest amount of time, but it was pretty difficult to actually beat it, but nothing that was like you have to spend hours upon hours of your day in order to beat it, you know? You need to actually make your way through buildings on fire, and then we get to the water bucket area where you literally have to, first off, fill up a bucket full of water, climb up a building, go into the building of an attic, and then just put out the fire. And you need to do this many times, while there's also zombies spawning inside of the buildings, but also around, where you have to actually get to your water buckets and make a little last stand inside one of the buildings for a little while. And then you have the final part where you have to do a firefight where there is just tons and tons of zombies constantly spawning all around this small kayak of a boat. And it doesn't help that there's also enemy undead zappers that can actually spawn in and like one-shot you depending how many times zombies have hit you. But this isn't really too bad as long as you have a bunch of officers spamming the, you know, Call of Arms ability and you just going into that sprint. But then you also have the guys in the boats actually shooting you, while you also have to shoot them back with your own cannon makeshifting on your boat, and it does tend to get very tricky along the way there. Quite honestly, this is a pretty-ish difficult map since literally every single one of us has to actually work together in order to beat it, but there's just one map that slightly beats it.
Number 1.
Check this out.
You stay up all night playing a game that you don't even.
There is no argument or debate to be held, it is Roscoff. The second this map actually went public, this map was considered to be the hardest map in Guts and Blackpowder for a while. Not only was it difficult enough for the devs to literally add in bandages along the way, but it's also difficult enough for every single player no matter how many hours they spent on this game. And while you're making your way there, you have many last stands objectives where you have to hold out against zombies that spawn in literally just feet away from you, pushing things out of the way. And then you have your first firefight in front of a church building. Why is it always church buildings? And this goes on for like 5-ish minutes where there are just plenty of zombies that actually spawn in. You then eventually find the president who has been hiding like a little weasel, and then you have to actually escort this MF to the actual boat. And while along the way there, he can actually take damage and eventually die if you aren't being too careful. Once you make it back to the boat, there is just a ton of zombies that just come from, well, the docks of the city, but also all around the boat. And you're given the tedious tasks to actually get your boat up and running in order to actually get the fuck out of there. And once you're done with that, you have one last final stand on the boat, or at least the ship, as you could say. This goes on for probably more than like 10 to 15 minutes. It goes on for a very long time, especially when you have one last stand and next to another. First off, making the boat actually get up and running, and then finally holding up the zombies that are on the boat. Very long map, quite difficult, not gonna lie, but it isn't too bad. But quite honestly, this map is quite infamous on just how difficult it can get.